Happy New Year! Welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. My name is Jason, and today is Friday, January 4th, 2019. We've got some new faces. I guess we only have one new face today. Jennifer, you want to say hello?
Hello.
Hello. Where are you coming from today?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Awesome. Yes, you got to make the distinction. Good to see you. Josh, it's been a while. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We've got the Phillips brothers. How you guys doing?
Hello. Kentucky.
And Sheriff, how's it going?
Hello, I'm Sheriff from Algeria. I'm fine. Thank you.
Good to see you, and your internet is holding up. So good on all fronts. So today we're going to give some demos of what we've been working on recently, and then we're going to get into topics. I think we have a few good topics today, so it should be a good discussion. Kevin, do you want to get us started with a demo?
Yes. Sorry, trying to find the button. Yeah, so I have a couple things to demo. Well, not that. The first thing is a new version of CanJS DevTools was published yesterday. So if you have it installed in Chrome, try it out. You should see now, if you open your DevTools, you should see this CanJS button up at the top. That's the biggest new thing, is that we now have this top level panel for CanJS. And this
are you able to, sorry to interrupt, are you able to bump up your...
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you open that up, you'll see this tree of all of the components in your page. This is just running this modals example CodePen. You can click on these now, and it'll show you the view model editor over here. A lot of stuff has changed under the hood in this release. So one of the big thing, obviously, is this component tree exists now. But then other than that, we also changed a lot of how the serialization works. So previously, everything, your entire view model was entirely serialized kind of recursively whenever you viewed the view model. It doesn't do that anymore. Now it's really just serializing the top level properties and then anything that's expanded. So you can kind of see, if I click on one of these, it'll expand. And actually, I don't know if any of these actually have data in them. Let me pick another. And as you can see here, it's kind of buggy still. There's definitely some problems with the serialization that we still need to work out. We fixed a lot of things related to this example specifically has a lot of elements and components actually stored on the view model, which breaks serialization, actually tries to serialize the DOM. And we fixed a lot of those, but there's still a few bugs. So if you see stuff like that, please submit issues and we'll get that stuff fixed. But as you can see, as you expand things, you'll see these sub-components pop in. So if you notice, when you click on these, you see a little delay. That's because that stuff's not serialized, and that's what's happening. There's an issue open to clean up some of this UX, so we show like spinners and things like that. Yeah, definitely try that out. Submit issues. Anyone who can test this, please do that. That would be very helpful. The second thing I wanted to demo is yesterday I spent some time working on this performance issue. So we got a couple different reports of performance issues in like older versions of Firefox. So Firefox like 45 or something was the version that was being tested. And then also IE 11 and Edge. So let me clean this up. So this is the example app that was submitted with the bug, which is awesome. It's really very helpful for people that submit issues to submit really detailed examples like this. So this example has this huge tree, this huge table in it. And you can see the way that it was given, basically it just renders this table automatically when the page is loaded. So the first thing that I did when I just want to talk through a few ways that I debugged this. The first thing that I did while debugging this was add this button so that the table doesn't load immediately. It loads when you click it. And then I also added some kind of benchmarking to show how long it's taking for this to be rendered, for this table to be rendered. So I'm basically just polling for there's an element at the very bottom of this thing. So that was the first thing I did, try to get this rough benchmark. I would normally use a mutation observer for this, but since this bug was related to mutation observers, I just did like a set timeout and check for this thing continually. So we had a rough idea that the issue was related to mutation observers because somebody else submitted a performance profile, which is really awesome. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the first thing that I would recommend if you're trying to fix something like this, if it's only breaking in a very specific environment, first thing I would do is try to break it everywhere else. So what I did is actually in CanView callbacks, we have this check to see if custom elements exist, and if it doesn't, then we use mutation observers. So the first thing I did was make it break in Chrome by basically commenting this out. So now if we do this, if I put this back the way it was in Chrome, this renders in like a second and a half, something like that, 1200 milliseconds, versus Firefox, it's taking like 35 seconds, something like that. So yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to recommend is like try to break it in the environment that you normally use if you can, because that way, so for one, I use Chrome and it's much easier for me to debug in Chrome, so that's why.
So was that? Do you consider that to be slow though? How many elements was it?
1.5 seconds.
Yeah, it was like I don't know how many elements you have.
I don't think that's slow. There's like 1,500 canned components in here in this table. Okay. I don't think. I mean, yeah, maybe we could make this faster, but it's like, an order of magnitude faster than the Firefox one.
How fast is it with the custom elements on?
This is the one with custom elements on.
Oh, it's wait. Okay, sorry. So
yeah,
what's the difference between MO versus custom elements?
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't explain it very well. So this is the base case. We use custom elements if they exist. So this is the one with custom elements, and it's like a second, a little bit more. So if I turn custom elements off, this will use mutation observers, and this one is basically the same as Firefox. It's a little bit faster than Firefox, or than the old version of Firefox that I'm testing that doesn't support custom elements. But you can kind of see it's just totally paused. It's not doing anything. In Firefox, it actually asks you if you want to kill the script, which is fun. But
so did you get far enough to kind of know? I know we had kind of guessed that it might be that some browsers have problems if you have multiple mutation observers observing like basically everything. Do you think that's the issue there?
So I think that might be an issue, but that's not the primary issue. So yeah, that's the next thing I want to talk a little bit about. I don't have a great example or a great example case that's showing what's happening, but basically the way that the code used to work in CanView callbacks, let me find where I have So the way that it used to work is we would set up this mutation observer over here, basically on the document element, looking for any elements that were added as children, and then we would basically render that whatever the node that was added, and all recursively render its children. So basically, what happens? This is a much smaller example that I basically have an app, and that app has a child, and that child has a grandchild. And basically what's happening is like this node gets added and that triggers a mutation. It renders its template, which adds this, and that adds a second mutation, and that renders its children, which adds this, which adds a third. And this mutation observer gets kicked off 3 times. But the problem is like when the first mutation happens, it renders this node and all of its children. And then the next mutation kicks off, which renders this and all of its children. And then this one gets kicked off and renders it and all of its children. And it doesn't actually render them. It doesn't recall their templates, but it calls this render node and children method, which eventually calls, there's a tag handler function down here that is what actually like picked off our canned component code. And this actually checks if the element itself has actually been rendered already. And so it doesn't do anything, but it still calls all of those functions recursively. So we basically just had like a recursion happening for no reason. So the main fix is I changed this to not use its own mutation observer and instead to use can.mutate, which has this same kind of thing set up, but will basically just call your callback one time for each of these children or each of these elements that are added to the page. So basically, I removed the recursion that we were adding. I think there might also be a second problem with two mutation observers happening, which is what's causing it to be so slow, because like it's just function calls that don't do anything, but it's extremely slow. But I don't know. I didn't really investigate it because removing that recursion fixed the issue. So and then also remove the second mutation observer. So if that is a problem, it's not a problem anymore. All right, that was a lot. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Anyway, thought it might be a little bit interesting for people to see.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting too, especially like what was causing that, like what the root was for that mutation observer bug. I liked it.
Thanks.
Cool. Matthew, do you have something you want to demo?
Yeah, well, now my mind's just racing about Kevin's thing. I wonder, Kevin, is there like we only care about stuff that's inserted outside of CanJS. Is there nothing that we do that's like, this is running inside of a template, so we're going to call its callbacks the can stash way?
Yeah, so that last thing that I showed, the thing that's checking if the element has already been rendered, that's basically the thing that checks if your element was rendered by stash. So if it was rendered by stash already, it will be marked as rendered there.
But by the time you get there, you've already done some somewhat expensive work, right? Then you do like a get elements by tag name star or something like that. Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now it's not doing that at all. No.
Oh,
but yes, it was before.
Okay. Oh, okay. It's not doing that at all.
Yeah. That was like kind of a recursion where it's checking all its children.
All right, I'll do my thing. About maybe I want to say a month ago. Not quite. No, it hasn't been a month. Portals were implemented in CanStash 5.2000 or something, or I don't know what we're up to these days. But I want to go over how portals work and stuff because it's pretty cool. I released portals, like I said, old CanStash version. However, it didn't work with DoneJS like SSR at the time, and it does now, so there's been several fixes. I created this, let's see if I can find it, example repository, DoneJS/portal XXR, and this is an example application, basically a hello world that uses portals. I want to show that. So what a portal is, it's a way to project stuff somewhere else in the page outside of a component template. One of the primary use cases, or kind of the main reason for developing this, is people want to have different titles and different types of metadata inside of their head, inside of the head element. For each different component. Sometimes you'll have, like, I don't know if you ever use, what is it, Open Graph, or like Open Graph title. There's all these different like metadata things that you can add, and they're usually specific to the component. They're not really related to the rest of the page. So we had a couple ideas, ways to make this achievable, and we went with the portal idea. So the way it works with a portal is, it's a helper in CanStash, so it comes with CanStash. You give it an element that you want to project into. So here we're doing into the head, and this is just like everything else. This is a property on the view model. So here in my view model, I have it defined as the document.head element, and then so it's just going to insert this into the head rather than into the template. So this allows you to like co-locate everything about the component in one place while projecting it elsewhere. And you can see our main index.stash it's got some global metadata. This is the, I forget what they call this, but this is the mobile viewport metadata. But the rest of it is going to be defined by 2 different components here. So get rid of this. That actually works. On demo gods, please work. I think it's going to work. So let me refresh. We get title home. If we look at the raw HTML, kind of a little bit messy, but there it is. Now, if you'll watch if I click on page 2, you'll see it flip. Page 2's title got inserted, the other one got removed. Now it says page 2. It works. Yay! If I refresh this page, SSR works, and you get page 2 in the HTML. So yeah, this is like one of the big nice things about portals. They allow you to collocate stuff. You ain't got to do kind of some weird gymnastics. I saw where people had stuff like here. We had like if the page if equal this dot page whatever home. Do here and you have a bunch of else statements, whatever. That was not fun because you have the same kind of stuff used to in the old DoneJS versions. Anyways, it used to be messy. It's not messy now. Now just put stuff in the component with the portal. The end.
I like it. I mean, I'm glad this has landed. I'm also really curious what people are using it for other than putting stuff in the head for like meta and title and like modals and that sort of thing, like a modal that needs to be inserted just like in the body to display over everything. I'm very curious what other uses this has.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool. You could do stuff like I'm going to project into a different component. It's like it's inside my component. I'm going to move it over there. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds wild. But I bet there's like a totally valid, maybe like integration with like third-party stuff. I could see like, oh, like you're using a third-party library and you want to like have part of your component inject into that. I don't know. It's a cool idea. I'm excited. Cool. Okay, Sheriff, do you have anything that you want to demo?
Yes. So let me share my screen. So what I want to demo is now the user can use they can call the partials that are stored in a let context. So for this example, I have a partial. You see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. You're good.
Okay. I have a partial with the content inside my partial, and I will start in a let context with the template context my partial, and I can call it here, and it will be rendered inside my page, and I don't know a particular use case for this demo, but I'm sure it will be helpful to use some parts of the template of a slash template to render it in a different blocks. Thank you. That's it for me.
Yeah, this is I'm thinking this would be useful for passing it to another component to render, right? Am I thinking about that correctly? That if you have an inline partial in your template and you want to pass it to a different component, that would be super useful.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, sweet.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for demos. Let's go to topics. Matthew, I think you posted first. Do you want to talk about moving to native modules?
Yeah, I guess so. I was
maybe.
Well, I mean, just as I hear, so I'm sure he'll have some opinions on it, but we can do it again another time, I guess. So my proposal is just to find a way to transition the DoneJS into native modules. Now that they exist and they're nice. Well, they're kind of nice. They exist. That's the nice thing. So the reason why we've always done client-side module loading in DoneJS application or in DoneJS and before then is because we really like kind of the modulet convention. If you don't know the modulet convention, Chasen wrote an awesome article about it on CSS tricks. Is that right? I can't remember where you wrote that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, good article about the modulet pattern and why that's nice and stuff. So overall, it makes it much easier to create like little demo pages where you can work on a component in isolation and kind of do the nice thing where you build an application out of many applications essentially, and that's much easier to do when you're working from the client than it is using something like Webpack or whatever else there are these days. Lots of options, but there are some problems that we've experienced with Steel. It can be slow, kind of the way that front end has expanded to where you start using a lot of like little modules from npm and stuff that can take a long time in large applications, and that's never fun. And then we have stuff like live reload for that, and that helps to some degree. But it kind of also deters from the idea of you don't have to like run a server while you're developing. So there's that kind of as a downside. Anyways, version compatibility, something that we've ran into. This is not a problem with Steel, but it's just kind of a problem, in general in front end, is that you can have version conflicts, and that's never a good thing. And there's always been this issue with like popular tools that people like such as Sass is the big one that I know that we've always had struggled with. Is Sass just doesn't run in I mean, there is a version that does, but it has many issues that just never worked really well for us. And people want to use Sass, and we've always been like, well, you have to use less because it works in Steel. So I think to me it's time to start moving away. So my proposal, my proposed solution is to do this really nasty thing where we change all of our code in CanJS to like do this. This essentially just pulls modules directly from node modules, moves everything to just standard import syntax. That's basically it. And the end user that wants to, like I said, the good thing about doing this is that this is like native modules are like a subset of module usage, with Steel or Webpack. It doesn't have nearly as many features as those things does, but it just like, it will work because all it is loading a file, So if people are using, I say that to say that people are using, who do want to use Steel or Webpack or whatever, this is not going to affect them at all. I don't think it will affect them at all. This is just all be internal to CanJS. But if you do want to just use straight modules in the web, you can like do something like this, which is create like your own little CanJS file where you just re-export can.js, and then you can just import from that everywhere. That kind of prevents you from having to write this throughout your code base, which is kind of a little bit of a bummer.
I would imagine that we could use that same pattern in our packages too, right? Where we would have, instead of writing the node modules.
We could, but I personally, I tend to think it's library code, so like those sorts of nice things are not as important. I don't know. You don't add imports all the time. I don't know. It does, but yeah, you could definitely do that. But you wouldn't want to. You probably wouldn't want to. Well, in our library code, we wouldn't want to pull from can.js though. We'd still want to be pulling from the individual repositories, but you could create your own little re-exporter kind of thing, if that's useful. This proposal goes into more stuff like you can't use like .stash files, unfortunately. But I'm not saying we like get rid of Steel Stash or Webpack Stash or any of that stuff. It still exists. But these are just some ideas to how to kind of like cope with that for the fact that you can't do plugins in the browser. We've already moved over to just using strings within our components. There's actually I know Atom and VS Code both have plugins that will syntax highlight this kind of thing. You can just add a comment. So anyways, I'm blabbling too much, but there's some ideas in this in this proposal. It goes into like server-side rendering, and that doesn't support native modules. So how we could still work with that. Anyways, that's my idea. So, and apparently Frank he says he's been working on it for a while. So maybe he can help.
So maybe I missed at the beginning. What's the benefit of doing this?
The benefit is it will be much faster, or it should definitely be much faster. Every time Steel load, I'm comparing it to Steel because this is a DoneJS proposal. Mm-hmm. Every time Steel loads, it like parses each file at least once, multiple times possibly if it's doing tree shaking, and it has to. At least twice, I should say, because the browser parses your JavaScript as well. So we parse it ourselves, possibly more than once, and then we give it to the browser and execute it, and just does a lot of stuff. If you ever look at like what Steel's npm extension does, it's like craziness. It's an incredible amount of code that runs over and over again. So it's just slow. So I guess that's the primary motivation to me. It's a faster workflow that still has the advantages of client loading. The other one is just like we never have been very good about making our stuff available with people who are using like TypeScript and Sass and those kinds of things.
So the performance benefit would be that the browser would cache all the individual files, right, and not parse them again. That's what you're saying.
The performance benefit is that the browser is much better at module loading than we are.
Okay. And then
it's not caching.
Gotcha. How does it help with integration?
What do you mean integration?
Like the integration with other tooling like TypeScript and Sass, and how does it?
Well,
just because we wouldn't be using Steel, so that.
Yeah, there wouldn't be. I guess there would be. You could just use those tools, right? You can just like use TypeScript, and it generates JavaScript files, and those JavaScript files are just standard JavaScript files, and like. I guess maybe what you're saying is that it doesn't. These don't integrate. This doesn't integrate with those tools directly. It just kind of leaves it as an external thing, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been suggesting to people forever to like just run Sass and like let it generate CSS files and import the CSS files instead of importing the Sass files. But people think that you have to like integrate Steel with Sass. Like that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't necessarily fix that. maybe they'll still.
It actually double downs on it, right?
Desire. Huh?
It actually double downs on that idea of like you use the whatever tool you want tooling to like get the job done, and then you're importing something like more native or standard.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I put those types of things down, my issue with it is that we have all these like supposed features that we don't do particularly well, and I'd rather work on stuff that we do well, you know? So it's like, hey, technically you can make plugins for stuff, but it's probably not going to work very well. So if we just don't do it anymore, we don't have to like worry about like trying to do things not well. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we're just giving up on TypeScript and Sass. Like you can just use that stuff yourself. That's the way I see it. Or you could use Webpack and whatever, and that probably handles it better.
Yeah, on the slowness front, I was surprised that you were bringing up like the parsing and that sort of thing, because I would expect the slowness to be from like just loading so many files, which I wouldn't expect the browser to do that much. Like if it still has a lot of files to load, it has a lot of files to load.
Yeah, it's not the number of files, because we always thought that, but then if you look at dev bundles, it improves things by like I don't know, 10 to 20%. It doesn't improve stuff that much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually tested this before. It's been a while, but yeah, its browser is significantly faster. I mean, part of that could be stuff that could possibly be fixed in Steel. Maybe, I don't know. Like to me, just knowing the code well, I would say like the npm plugin is like extremely complex and probably not super efficient. Maybe that could help. I would say that might be the biggest. And we wind up doing things. Well, still, you wind up doing like a bunch of little things. There's like a death by 1,000 cuts kind of issue with Steel, is that you do a lot of little things. Sometimes you do them more than once, and you do everything asynchronously. So you wind up generating like a billion promises loading Steel.
Yeah, I could see how the browser's native module loading would be a lot faster.
Yeah.
Is there any way for us to get like a semi-quick benchmark of what the performance gain would be without rewriting all of DoneJS? Maybe we could just benchmark a small piece or something.
I mean, I can create some fake modules, like create a project with 500 fake modules and show you the difference, that kind of thing. I could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see.
Yeah. I have done this before. It's been a while, but I'll see if I have the old code. Yeah, for sure. I would love to do that.
Cool.
Welcome to the party, Justin. Did you hear any of our conversation before about this this proposal, or did you just join?
Nope, I just walked in.
Yeah. Did you read through it? Did you have any thoughts?
No.
Cool.
No.
All right. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. All right. Let me stop presenting you. So I wanted to talk about a couple things. I think first, I wrote down homepage redesign, but I think better to talk about some meetup stuff first. We've been playing around with the idea of not doing our local Los Angeles and Chicago DoneJS meetups and focusing our efforts on like an online Bitovi meetup. And right now, I'm kind of tentatively planning it for 4 weeks from now to take over the spot from our contributors meeting. So I wanted to have a conversation about that. The goal of the online meetups would be to still have like presentation material that we're like putting time into, like we do for the DoneJS meetups, but to have that go into one thing that we present online instead. Where it overlaps with the contributors meetings is we have these demos that we do some prep for to show off things. I think that we could probably maybe increase the quality of those a little bit to be a little bit more prepared, and then have them be a part of this online meetup and not just in the contributors meeting anymore. And then tied to that is like, as a company, Bitovi as a company, we're not just development. We have design, and like a lot of the value that we bring onto projects is like being able to run projects successfully. So having those like project management, soft skill portions be a part of this online thing to kind of like show off Bitovi, I think could be a valuable thing. So yeah, those are like kind of some thoughts that at least Justin and I have been throwing around for the last few weeks. I wanted to see if anyone had opinions.
So would this work kind of like regular meetups do, where it's once a month or twice a month at a certain time?
Yeah, it's a good question how frequently we would do it. Like internally, we're on the on a 6-week cycle, and been doing. I think it would be more engaging if we did it at least like once a month. And I don't think it would have to be like, I know for DoneJS LA, they usually last a couple hours. So I wouldn't expect us to do to do like online meetups that last 2 hours. So something shorter and more frequently, less frequently than the contributors meetings, more frequently than we've been doing the local meetups.
Do you think people will come if it's during their workday? Have you talked to anybody about whether or not it'd be better at night?
Yeah, that's something that we need to figure out too, or I need to figure out too. It's a good question. I like what I'm gonna be doing in the next week is trying to talk to people to see who would actually like show up, who would be interested in coming. I'm hoping to involve people outside of Matovi in our community as well. So I'm going to be reaching out to people to do like a little talk about like their project and how they use CanJS or DoneJS or whatever. So it's tough because we have people internationally. We have a lot of users in Europe. So putting it in the evening for us cuts them off from being able to participate as much. So I don't know how to strike that balance.
Yeah, and I'm not sure one way or the other. I wasn't trying to. My question came out more leading than I wanted it to be, because maybe during the workday is better. I don't really know. I was just curious.
Yeah.
I would guess not personally. Just, I mean, I don't know. Most people have to work during their workday. They're not able to take 2 hours off. I mean, some people are, but
yeah, I don't think it would be a 2-hour thing either. I think, like I personally think that like a 30 to 45 minutes of content and then just like a hangout afterwards to just talk about whatever. I feel like that would be ideal. I'm not sure. And when I talk about talks, I think of it as like shorter, more focused, almost like lightning talk style, not like huge presentations.
yeah, I think you'd have to. The thing that I think is you would have to really market it as a meetup somehow, make it feel like a meetup versus just what we're doing now. Because you just do what we're doing now, you know, it's going to be the usual people that come. And we want to, I guess, like kind of like a meetup. You want random people to come because it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Julian, by the way. Silently joined the stream. Good to see you. Cool. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Nope. Cool. And then the second thing that I wanted to talk about for this, I'm gonna share my screen, just to give a little background. So that's not what I want. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been starting to work on redesigning our homepage. Our homepage now is less than optimal. I think we can do a better job of selling CanJS and then making people identify when people come to the homepage, having something for them that they can identify with and say, okay, this is the tool that I need. So our goal in working on this redesign is to convert more people, at least from the homepage, getting more people into the guides, and starting to actually like try it. And I think we've made a lot of great progress in making it even easier to like get started with CanJS. So I think we can convert more users. The process that we've been following is first like trying to answer some questions. I think we have a good idea on how decisions get made in selecting frameworks and how people learn about CanJS, mostly from like talking to people and analytics and that sort of thing. But the big thing, the big like discovery phase is like figuring out what message is going to actually like convert new users. So we've been contemplating what that messaging should be. I sent out a survey last week, not to our DoneJS community, but through SurveyMonkey to a wider audience of people who aren't familiar with our stuff, just to get a feel for like what kind of apps people are building, what kind of features are important to them, what they like about their current frameworks and what they're unsatisfied with in the frameworks that they already use. And in that, we're kind of focusing on this messaging of CanJS is really good at building CRUD apps. Most people seem to be familiar with the term CRUD, and we have stuff in CanJS that makes it easier to prototype and build CRUD apps. I think especially our model layer stuff kind of sets us apart from other frameworks. So that's kind of like the focus that we're starting to take in building out a new homepage. And that's kind of what I'm going to be working on in the next week or so, is starting to come up with that messaging and figure out what resonates with people. I don't know how much we can get into a discussion of this, but I just wanted to bring it up as I didn't have a demo, but bring it up as like a topic of a project that we're working on. But if people have like opinions or thoughts on this, now would be the time to discuss. Nope. Cool. All right. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Did anyone else post topics or anything that they wanted to discuss?
All right, since no one has topics on anything and lacks the force of will to push back or have fun, at least discussion, I will talk. Now that I've had time to read through Matthew's proposal, I will happily dig into that. So I guess the big, I posted this in the comments, but the big thing is, so it talks about version compatibility and poor integration with popular tooling as being problems that it's trying to solve, but I didn't understand how it solves those specifically. It seems like those problems would still exist with native modules. There would have to be other tools to solve those.
Correct. Kevin brought this up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It doesn't necessarily solve those. I guess why I wrote those down is it doesn't attempt to solve them, whereas Steel does attempt to solve them, and it kind of solves them poorly, I would say. So that's why I see it as an advantage, is that we're just, well, no, there's no integration with SAS, but like I was saying, you can use SAS today with Steel, just like use SAS directly, but people don't do that because they think that you have to have a Steel SAS plugin in order to use SAS, but SAS will just generate CSS files, which Steel can consume. So there's like this.
Is that a problem with documentation though? Like, and just giving people, here's how you can use SAS? I think would that problem still exist in, like if DoneJS is still like, hey, this big thing, I think you kind of have that problem still exists. You have to show people how to do it.
Yeah, in talking about this, it made me realize that I feel like our solution for people who want to use any specific technology like TypeScript or SAS is to be like, yeah, like Steel doesn't do anything with that. You don't need plugins because those things are like in the end generating something that is like native or standard, and that's what Steel should be consuming, instead of having the like one tool like Webpack's approach of like one tool that's going to be the entire pipeline for processing all the things. So you need all the plugins in the world to like handle whatever million different things. Yeah, I personally think that it's like a documentation or like marketing thing that we.
I don't think so. I don't think Steel ever handled styling well at all. Like even CSS files, there's always people complain that there's duplication and like order matters in style. So you can't just, the way that JavaScript modules work is that the order somewhat doesn't matter. It just matters that you're depending on stuff that is more important than you. Whereas like actual styling order matters, and like I don't know, not even sure if it's theoretically possible to get that to reconcile those two things.
I would say that JavaScript order can very much matter if you're creating stateful side effects in your modules. And in theory, you know, with CSS, like if you can be you can keep your. I would just say like they're kind of similar, but I would agree that in CSS it's going to be more common that people write their CSS that order matters versus JavaScript, mostly because of training. You can still write your CSS to keep things independent.
You can, but you have like selector specificity that matters, and that matters on like how it's actually ordered in the document. And since CSS doesn't have dependencies between each other, you can't enforce that order like in your CSS. You can just hope that it works out. But
I still think to what it sounds like to me is what you're saying is by just like not even by appearing to not even handle anything, even approaching that, then people will look for their own solutions and we're not left holding the.
Well, I'm saying as far as Steel, in the proposal, I do talk about styling and I list a few options of how we can do that. I think DoneJS needs some type of solution for styling, but I don't know what that is yet.
So I don't see this as purely a documentation issue, like you guys are kind of saying. Like if you just told people if you want to use Sass, use some other tool to use Sass, then they're gonna like look up, well, what tool do I use for that, and probably see like Webpack or something. And then what we're gonna tell people to use Steel and Webpack side by side? That I don't think that makes any sense.
Like Sass, I'm not familiar with how it works, but I'm assuming that if it requires a compiler of sorts, that's something that they provide, right?
Yeah, they do have like a npm or a whatever command line tool to compile it to CSS.
Yeah. Okay. So I would.
But that doesn't mean that most people who look up how do I load Sass are going to find that instead of finding Webpack.
Yeah, but if they're using Steel, like you can tell them that's how you do it, is you just set up a configuration to just build all your Sass files into CSS, and then CSS Steel can load them.
Yeah, it can. So I think then you're going to end up having to document every other thing. And maybe that's what we want to do, but
or at least there's a certain threshold of popularity that things cross, and that certain things, like if it's just, hey, it needs a build step to get it into CSS or JavaScript, like you can show that pattern rather generically.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, what's the alternative?
The downside of documenting things is that you own what you document. So if you document to use Sass, do this, and they change the API, well, now it's just
what level of some level of documentation is just like put it in. I actually think putting it in a forum post is a level of documentation that we should do more of, because I think that, like, A, you don't own it, but like, I mean, I was just kind of booting myself up on Angular and RxJS and stuff like that. And I still find a lot of stuff not in their official docs, and you're making use of that. And some stuff, like, you know, it doesn't work or it's not great, but like you help like piece these fragments together and you get it working. I would still say that like an hour or two quick jot up of like in a forum post of how to connect TypeScript or or Sass, and just like, here's an example of doing that. Yeah, it's released for SteelJS 1.0, but it's still kind of accurate for Steel 2.0, and someone could probably put it together. At least, you know, it's good, not perfect, and it's low cost. I think we should do more of that kind of thing.
So, sorry for interrupt. So in my workaround, I used to compile Sass with gulp. So I have a gulp task and watching for Sass changes, and then I compile to CSS, and I load my CSS in Steel with the CSS plugin. So that's the best solution I came with, and I'm fine with that.
And Julian, if you want to get a virtual high five for me, can you just post what you did in a forum post? And
I can.
Awesome. I mean, let me and also take a step back. I kind of wanted to just be like, have an interesting conversation when I jumped in, because no one was discussing anything, at least from when I started.
Yeah, we started discussing for like 2 minutes before you got here.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess let me say, I do think we need to figure out what the future of module loading looks like again. But so it's a very good discussion to have. My biggest reservation about this is just like, those modules are still so underpowered. It feels like until the bear selector, or whatever it's called.
Bear specifiers, I think.
Or, yeah, whatever it's called. Like, I just feel like it's very, I don't know. It's weird, and I mean, I would almost just like, I don't know. I think there's just something to like waiting. I mean, what is the advantage of us just like jumping ahead and doing it, versus just like, okay, well, we'll just make sure CanJS and everything else can be used with Webpack and maybe DoneJS, like just use other things until we feel like we have a very strong take, which keeps our value, I mean, for the most part, our value is just being able to quickly create modlets. Right? Is that the thing that we really care about in the end?
Yes.
The whole reason for us to keep doing stuff is so that we can do modlets.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think the advantage of doing it is that, well, there's not going to be a breaking change. It works with any loader today. Like, we made this change, it would work with Steel, it would still work with Webpack. It wouldn't affect people who do stuff that way. But it would also work with a new thing that exists that you currently can't use with CanJS. And then all the benefits I listed at the top that you get from not using Steel. Like
how hard would it be to like transpile to this? Like, you know, one thing that we could eventually just bite the bullet and be like, every single sub-project is essentially a transpiled build. So that we have the common, like you talk about, like CommonJS and.
So in the issue, I kind of wrote down what I think it would take. I mean, we already do, the transpile does transpile. Well, we don't have the CGS, the ES.
Well, just in what you wrote up, it sounds like you want to actually author like the imports with the .. no modules can't reflect.
Yeah, that's the way I would do it, yeah.
Not transpile to that.
Yeah, right.
I think it would be much easier to transpile to that.
Well, I think you wouldn't. If you authored it that way, you would. That's kind of what I was saying. That's what I'm saying. This is a subset of what Webpack can still give you, because it's a subset. It works with those things, right? So, but if you make that like the second class thing, then now you do have to transpile, whereas you don't have to transpile if you author it this way. So why would you want to transpile if you don't have to?
Yeah, why would it be easier? Why wouldn't you just use that transpile code to code mod it?
Because well, the problem that I said below, which is like you're gonna have to figure out while you're working in those projects, like /node modules isn't gonna work. So like if I'm working in CanConnect and I want CanReflect, it's not going to be /node modules. It could be /node modules to get to CanReflect. So that's a problem that needs to be figured out. And maybe there's another solution for it, which is like to put everything in like a source folder or something like that. But then might as well transpile at that point anyways. I don't know. That's just, those two things might be orthogonal. I haven't thought all the way through it. But, that needs to be figured out.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't thought about that. I will think about that.
No problem.
Yeah, and to me, I wonder how much of a problem this is going to be long term, while like importing stuff with name specifiers or whatever is still being figured out. Like maybe this isn't a problem in a year or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
to me, the real advantage of this is it like removes the CanConnect problem or the CanCrud problem I was having, which is I want CanCrud to work in web. I want CanCrud to work in. I want CanCrud to work in a CodePen, but it can't because it doesn't. There's no. Well, the other problem is that all these would be no. It actually wouldn't fix that problem. So take it back. It'd be nice if it did.
What is the problem?
So I want CRUD to, or any third-party thing. I want that to work in a CodePen to be able to import CanCrud, but then CanCrud can import like everything from CanJS that it needs, right? Even individual modules. But I think there would still be a padding problem if everything was /node modules. Because in the case of CanCrud, it would need to be like // version, probably some semver version, CanReflect or something JS, and then CanReflect would have the same thing. And that's why I just feel like I don't know. it's such like a hard. This discussion is totally worth having. I just think it's one of those things.
I think you'd want to like an unpackaged build that points everything to unpackage.
Yeah.
URLs.
You're just saying because your CodePen would need to load CanJS, and then CanCrud would load a different CanJS?
It would load CanJS, but then CanJS would like independently, like what you'd want to do is build it so it can work for everything. So like essentially the CanJS build that we tell for Webpack or for people to use is actually just like importing everything, every single sub project, right, from unpackage. I wonder if like what people should do is like have a local unpackage.
What?
Like a local unpackage that just like is a proxy to like NPM, or like just like, oh, if it's not there, I'm gonna download it and then I'm gonna serve it up. And it's
you can do that. It's open source. I'm pretty sure you can run that locally.
That'd just be really interesting to do, and it could use like, you know, just download straight from unpackage instead of even NPM. I don't know if there's an idea there. That might be interesting. Because it's flat. Unpackaged is flat, so you're not dealing with node NPM. You're addressing, and it's a URL, and it would just work like you could have a local, and then you could just like, hey, I'm going to use unpackage and just, you know, public, and then I don't know. Your tools are all built around that as like just a URL for everything in node modules, but it's all flat, and then you just build off of that. I don't know. I'm getting crazy here. Let's move on to another topic.
I think this is our last topic for the day, and we've been running for about an hour. So I don't want to cut it short. But I think we're going to end here. Okay. If you made it this far, thank you. Go ahead and give us a like and subscribe. You probably already have if you've made it this far. Otherwise, we'll be back in 2 weeks with more demos, more nerdy topics about native modules or whatever, not sure. Until then, see you next time, guys. Bye.